are we looking at a team in the Bruins that need a defenseman, that need a mean, nasty, big defenseman clearing bodies in front of the net and that can, take control of those situations at the end of games where it's been an issue? Sent directly to your inbox via email and read it right away there. I also write columns after every Bruins game for Boston Sports Journal, home to Greg Bedard, Mike Giardi, and a lot of talented people. So go check that out as well. With me today is the Boston Herald, Steve Conroy. We should also have the Boston Globe's Kevin Paul Dupont here at some point. We'll see if he pops in and when he pops in. But Steve, thank you very much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Let's thank our sponsors real quick too. FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So just download the app. It's really easy to use. You can use it for spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get going with your wagers on the NFL, the NHL, and the NBA. And amazingly, if you bet on the Patriots to win last night, you actually won money for once this year. Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, and number sponsor of the show. Ready-to-eat meals in 2 minutes, dietitian approved, delicious, made by chefs. You throw them in the microwave for 2 minutes and they're ready. You can get all kinds of stuff: keto, calorie smart, vegan, everything else. Head to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use code Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. All right. Let's get right into it, Steve. We're coming off a 3-1 loss for the Bruins against the Sabres last night. I would qualify this one as a dud, a stink bomb, anything you want to call it. I'd put it up there with the loss to Columbus in Columbus as probably the two worst performances I've seen from the team this year, just as far as effort, will to win, any of that stuff, urgency, all those things. And these are going to happen from time to time. With the NHL schedule, obviously, but just what you thought in a 3-1 loss where Jim Montgomery was calling out the life and the energy of the team afterwards, and basically saying they never even got to average hockey that they were playing in that game.
Yeah, I thought his best quote was, "We went from awful to poor, and I never thought we got to average."
Yeah.
You can almost set your watch to it. The second half of back-to-backs can be tough, but so can especially for this team, for some reason or another, when they have 3 or 4 days off, they come out flat as can be. But still, you keep waiting for them to turn the corner in a game. When they got the first penalty, okay, they're going to kill this, then they're going to gain momentum, and then they'll be on their way. Didn't happen. They make it to the first intermission, 0-0. You think, okay, they're going to wake up now. Nope, just never happened. The only goal they got was, frankly, a lucky bounce. And they were in the zone a lot, I thought, and I thought Levi played pretty well, but he didn't have to be spectacular. He didn't have to be great. Give Buffalo credit. They kept them to the outside. They didn't allow a lot inside the house, and they earned the victory.
And give Connor Clifton some credit. He made some good plays in this game. I have no doubt he was motivated going against the team that decided they couldn't afford to keep him at a higher price tag and wanted to show them what they were missing. And he makes a great play, coming down towards the net on a net drive and then finding Tage Thompson in the middle for an absolutely scorched one-timer. And then I thought what was the key sequence in the game was in the third period when the Bruins had the puck around the Buffalo net and they were scrambling and it looked like they might score. And Clifton absolutely buried Kevin Shattenkirk in front of the net. Just sent him flying. The puck gets cleared, and then Olofsson goes down and scores the insurance goal to make it 3-1. And it was right after that happened. And I thought that sequence was, that's where the game was won or lost. Never mind pulling the goalie and everything else. And you hate to say it, like there are times I feel like this year, even though Connor Clifton was a bottom pairing defenseman, and he was a guy, certainly they weren't even willing to go to the lengths that Buffalo did, for a few $1 million a year to keep him. But I think there's been times this year where they've missed a Connor Clifton type player that will clear bodies and bury people in front of the net at times, will play physical, and will play a little bit on the edge, and brought a level of toughness that was subtracted to this team, and they haven't been able to replace it, especially on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. And, some nights, and, they're going to be without Forbett for the next month. Some nights, that Forbett, Shattenkirk pairing looked okay. Other nights is let's see what Ian Mitchell can do, right?
Yeah.
It hasn't been great. And
Shattenkirk played 22 minutes last night too. He played a lot last night.
Yeah, well, I mean, he picked up a lot of time on that 6-on-5 there.
He did.
But yeah, it's Clifton made a great play on that goal. He and Van Riemsdyk were going different directions, and Clifton knew where the puck was and knew what he wanted to do with it. I mean, it was tough for the Bruins, in their financial situation to match what Buffalo could pay Clifton. And frankly, the playoff that he had last year made it a little easier to walk away. But, they miss him right now.
They do. And let's be fully transparent. Clifton's not exactly tearing it up with Buffalo either this year. I don't think he's having a particularly great season with them as well.
No.
This was just, he had a really good game, I thought, and he made a difference a few different times in that game last night for the Sabres to win, and kind of put on display some of the things that he did very well for the Bruins, not consistently, but he would show flashes where he would do these things. And it made him effective for long stretches. Interesting that Jim Montgomery decided last night, and the organization, frankly, I'm sure this was an organizational decision, decided last night was the night to put Matt Poitras up on the 9th floor, have him watch a game. I fully endorse this, and I think it's the right thing to do, is pick your spots to kind of give him some rest, or, let him see from upstairs what he's watching on the ice, and let him take a breath and sort of, hit a little bit of a reset button. But I also think it's funny when he's not in the lineup. I do think you notice that you miss some of the puck possession that he brings, and some of the dynamic offensive ability that he brings, even if it at times lately hasn't always been there, because he's, you've got to be careful about a 19-year-old sort of, hitting that wall during a long NHL season. So I understood why they do it, and I think it's the right move to do that intermittently during the season. But I also think, given the personnel that they have up front, especially offensively, they miss him when he's not in the lineup.
Yeah, it says a lot about where this team is, that they're that reliant on a 19-year-old kid to play center for them. But it's, I guess this is the way of the future. Anaheim, kind of led the way with Carlson. They took it to the extreme. I thought that was a little too much, but looks like this is what teams are going to do now with 18 and 19-year-old kids. Yeah,
I just hope it doesn't turn into a load management situation across the NHL.
That's
a trend.
That's certainly
using that phrase.
Yeah, that's certainly what it sounded like last night, right? For Poitras.
Yeah, it did. But I also think, we've seen that before, though, right? With 19-year-old kids when they're in the NHL, that teams will, pick their spots to have them sit upstairs and sit for a game. And I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. It was interesting to me that Matt Poitras scratched, and then all of a sudden they're getting outshot 19-6 in the first period, and they look completely flat on the ice.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
let's obviously get to, what I think might be the biggest development from last night. Charlie McAvoy getting injured, upper body injury on a reverse hit elbow, it looked like, from JJ Petraglia as they were both going for the puck. He leaves the game, doesn't return. They term it an upper body afterwards and don't really have any kind of an update, which, that raises the concern level a little bit, especially with a player like Charlie McAvoy that's had some concussion issues in the past. How concerned are you about this? And, I think, honestly, of the players that the Bruins have, I think McAvoy is one of those guys they absolutely cannot, survive for a long period of time without in this lineup. I think they're extremely reliant on him at this point with this roster this season.
Yeah, it's concerning. When he went out of the lineup with the suspension, you were waiting for, okay, maybe this is the moment where Lindholm, grabs the reins and plays like he did last year. I think he's playing better right now than he had been. But they're going to need a lot from him if McAvoy is going to be out of the lineup. As far as whether it was a dirty hit or not, I've looked at it a bunch of times, and I really can't tell, to be honest with you, because obviously the elbow comes up, but the elbow is going to come up when you're going to make a hit like that. And did he catch it with the elbow? Or it's really hard to tell.
Yeah, it is. And I think they could have called, because the elbow was raised and it caught him in the face. I think you definitely could have called an elbowing minor penalty for sure. And nobody, I think, would have squawked too much about it on the ice. But I also think that's a hard one for the refs to see, when they're both converging on the puck like that and there's so much going on. That can be a difficult one to watch, especially if you're watching more the puck than you're watching what the guys are doing to each other as they're converging into it. Do I think that's a suspension level play? No, I don't. I think it could have been maybe called a minor elbowing penalty on the ice, because he definitely did raise the elbow up, and players have to be, responsible for, if their elbows are going up, what happens after the fact. But I don't think there was a lot of malicious intent. I think that was two players that were competing for the puck, and it was a guy in JJ Petraglia that probably was bracing for McAvoy to lower the boom on him, given the kind of physical player that he is. So, it's just one of those unfortunate things where McAvoy was a little low going in, and he was right at elbow level and caught it right in the face. And as far as the loss goes, him being out of the lineup or anything like that, I think that is a major concern, just given the state of the Bruins defenseman core right now. Like, I think Brandon Carlo's been their best defenseman from beginning to now, most consistent best defenseman all year. McAvoy has been very good, but I think he's had ups and downs. I think he's still a minus player for the season. He had a really rough stretch when they went through the losing streak. Hampus Lindholm has been very much up and down this year, more down than up, I think, and has not been as good as he was last year at all. My concerns about him are not only that he doesn't seem as aggressive offensively, and I know that could be tied into them not having as much puck possession, and sort of the defensemen just aren't in good positions to create offensively or to take risks as much as they were last year with such a loaded lineup. But I also think he's just not really skating as well as he did last year either. He seems to be chasing things a little bit more, and he's on pace to have over 100 penalty minutes. He's taken a lot of penalties too. There's just a lot of things going on with him where I don't know that he's in a position to really step up and be that guy this year. If McAvoy is out for an extended period, but it's going to come down to him, and it's probably going to come down to a player like Mason Lohrei to really step up and play big minutes and try to make more of an impact as well. And I think there's a real question if any of these guys are going to be able to do it.
Yeah. Lohrei looked like the same guy who went down to Providence. He showed us the flashes in the offensive zone, in defensive zone. He still needs work. It's a huge blow, especially with Forbett out, and Forbett and McAvoy are two completely different players, but they have their roles. And we saw last night in the 6-on-5 how much they missed them. Shattenkirk is a smart offensive player, but he can't take the puck down low and circle around the net like McAvoy can do. So, if he's going to be out, it's a major issue, and this is a major juncture in the Bruins season if that's the case.
It is, and both Forbort and McAvoy are big physical defensemen, even though they're very different kinds of defensemen. And if you subtract two big physical defensemen from a back end that's not overly big or physical in the way that they play, that is absolutely 100% a concern. And it kind of leads into, something I'm writing about this weekend, something we've seen all season, something I talked to Jim Montgomery and some of the Bruins about earlier this week. It's the issues that they've had 6-on-5 when they are defending and the other team has pulled the goalie. They've allowed more goals to other teams when they pull their goalie than anybody else this season. And I know they've been in that situation more than anybody else as far as minutes go. And I think situationally, there was one team, I forget who it was, who had been in more instances where the other team had pulled the goalie for a 6-on-5, but they were up among the league leaders in that as well. So they've been out on the ice protecting 1-goal leads quite a bit this year, but they've also allowed a lot of those goals to tie the game. They have not scored a ton of empty net goals in those situations, even though they've been in that a lot. So you're talking about they have not had a ton of positive outcomes. The Bruins have compared to other teams when they're in that situation defending with the goalie pulled. And so Jim Montgomery attributed some of it to, inexperienced forwards in those positions for the first time, where they'd always had Patrice Bergeron in the past, obviously always in that situation at the end. And they've got a couple of experienced guys that have been there before, and Coyle and Marchand. But other than that, they have a lot of players they're trying out, protecting leads late in the games in the third period that haven't done it before. And there's going to be some ups and downs there. And certainly, if you don't have a guy like Patrice Bergeron on faceoffs that can automatically, or almost automatically win the faceoff, that helps you quite a bit in those situations in your own end when you're taking faceoffs in those situations. But I think it also speaks to the defenseman in front of the net and them, not necessarily being able, not being as mean and nasty as they need to be at times when they're protecting those leads. And I think some of it falls on the defenders, not clearing bodies and not doing whatever it takes to keep the puck out of the net at the end. I think that was actually the day before this game against Buffalo. The Bruins had a practice, and Montgomery mentioned it after the game last night, where he didn't like what he saw at practice the day before. And I remember hearing him yelling and screaming during practice and stopping drills and really demonstratively showing the defensemen how to clear bodies from the front of the net, lift up sticks, and do whatever you need to do to make sure that area is clear. And he knows, obviously, watching that's a problem. My question to you, Steve, is we've talked so much about needing a center because Bergeron and Krejci retired, and trading for a center, acquiring a center, all that. Are we looking at a team in the Bruins that need a defenseman, that need a mean, nasty, big defenseman clearing bodies in front of the net and that can, take control of those situations at the end of games where it's been an issue? That the Bruins fans were spoiled. They had Zdeno Chara for a long, long, long time. That was that guy in front of the net that was making sure those kind of, those pucks didn't go in and making sure they were protecting those 1-goal leads. And obviously there's not another Zdeno Chara out there, but do they need sort of a mean, nasty defenseman to add to this group?
It's a good question. Full strength, I'm not sure they do need that guy, but right now when you're looking at life without Forbort for the next month, and who knows if they're going to be missing McAvoy, you would think so. Yeah. I mean, Zadorov got traded. Zadorov, I mispronounce his name all the time.
Yes.
Got traded for draft picks inside Calgary's division. So you kind of, you can gather what Calgary thought of him to trade him for not much return. In
somebody they're going to be playing a lot.
Yeah, within the division. So did they miss out on him? Right now it may seem like it, but I'm not sure over the long haul that they did. Could you use that guy? Sure. Where are you going to get him? Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's a few names out there potentially, right? Like, I know they'd been interested in Jacob Middleton in the past. He's a guy that, if Minnesota's not going anywhere, maybe. I, part of me would love to see the Bruins get a Radko Gudas type of defenseman, even though he's a bit of a cheap shot artist and he's been a villain sort of in Bruins fans' minds before. But I think he's also the kind of guy that the other team is concerned about and kind of intimidates the other team. And I remember him going at it with Marchand during that playoff series last year and kind of setting a tone early in that series. And I just don't know that they have guys like that or a guy like that. And I think they could use that on the back end, even if they have to, mix around their personnel and somebody doesn't end up playing anymore or becomes, a surplus. I think they could use a player like that. Dupes, you're coming in midstream. Boston Globe's Kevin Paul Dupont, thanks for joining us. Do you think that the Bruins need to add an element of nastiness to their back end that they don't necessarily have right now?
Yeah, no question. And first of all, my apologies for coming in late here. Tuukka's fault. Hashtag Tuukka's fault. Let's just say that.
Tuukka, the emergency goaltender's fault. Yes.
And I want to know in the first few minutes that I missed here, Conroy being in the car, was he singing songs too? Was that part of...
There was no carpool karaoke from Steve Conroy, unfortunately. Maybe next time.
Oh yeah, no question. You mentioned Z, but I also mentioned McQuaid and Seidenberg and Boychuk and let's not forget Connor Clifton. Cliffy back there.
Yeah, we talked about him earlier. He had a great game last night. He showed exactly what they're missing. Right,
and frankly, Buffalo's been missing that from Clifton, so it was good to see him getting in the mix. But yeah, they do need snarl, and it's a very it's a skilled unit. It's defined by Lindholm and McAvoy. It's a skilled unit. We know McAvoy can do that, but you don't want him doing that because, not that last night is an example of it, but, he might have gotten hurt. He did get hurt last night. We don't know to what extent. But, yeah, they need some muscle back there and not muscle in the sense of going out and pounding guys. You mentioned Gudas. He's a perfect example of the kind of guy you want. So, but it's, they haven't designed it that way. They've thinned that out front to back for a number of years now. And, I think right now you're seeing the consequence of that. Now, that said, easier to add that element, not that it's a layup, easier to add that element than their other big missing piece here, which is a defined, legit number one center. And, thinking they can shop for that now, I think is a fool's errand. But I think you can always add more grit. The factor is here, whether it's up front or in back, you're going to give up some skill.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little earlier, Dupes. Just if this is indeed, something. I mean, let's just be honest. When you see McAvoy get hit in the face with an elbow and go out of the game and it's an upper body injury, the first thing you think of is a concussion. You hope that that's not what it is. But if it is something like that, it's, an injury, unfortunately, McAvoy has dealt with before. If it turns into some kind of an injury where he misses, a few weeks, a month, how much trouble are the Bruins in, given how important he's been to this team and how important he is to this team, given the rest of their personnel and the minutes he plays and the role that he plays.
Steve?
No, go ahead, Kevin.
Steve already covered it, Dupes. Go jump right in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Points off for tardiness again. Yeah, no.
Make sure your parents sign the tardy slip and bring it back, Dupes.
Yeah, there's no plugging in for him in terms of skill level. I will say early on last night, he took a wrist shot. He got rid of a wrist shot really quickly, ended up hitting the left post. And I when I saw it, I said, geez, it's almost a surprise when he shoots. And that to me is where he this is a subtext, I guess. He's got to up that part of his game. He's got to be more willing to get it off. And I understand there's a million parts to that, and he is inclined most to pass. But yeah, no, they'd be in big trouble here if he's going to big trouble defined that they'd slip back. Let's face it, they've clinched a playoff spot, and that very much may be why we've seen this slump of late.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you're right. I think they did the hard work getting out to such a big lead and making sure that by Thanksgiving they were very much in a playoff spot, all that stuff. But
by human nature, they know what happened last year, right?
Right.
They went out here and banged it out like no one's ever banged it out, and then it folded up. So I think all of that is in the psychological complacency department.
Yeah. Interesting to see despite the record, despite where they are in the standings, continued frustration from Jim Montgomery with this team when they do go through these stretches. Calling out the lack of life and energy on the team last night. He was very vocal. You could hear him from upstairs at Warrior a couple days ago during practice, demonstratively, yelling at his team and instructions and, scolding them. Is that something to watch, just how frustrated Jim Montgomery is getting with this team, despite the record and despite the success that they've had this year, Steve?
Well, I mean, that's his job, right? And I'm sure he's hearing that frustration from above.
Yeah.
But I think Montgomery sees the record that they have, which is still pretty lofty, and sees the expectations that go along with that record, and realize that team isn't that good,
Right.
and he's gonna have a hard time living up to those expectations, come April, if he doesn't get certain things in order. Whether he has the personnel to get those things in order, I'm not so sure. The job he's done so far, through December 8th right now has been, pretty notable. I think he's not going to win the Jack Adams again, but he's done a hell of a job, I think.
No, I think so too. I honestly think he's done a better job this year than he did last year, just as far as getting more out of the team, potentially than what he has on the roster. But like I kind of think of it as, trying to get blood from a stone at a certain point, where if you've already, if you've coaxed this much success out of them at this point, and you're still like really going at them hard and driving them hard, is there a certain point where, the message starts to get lost when the players look at the record and they look what they've done, and, there becomes like a sort of difference of opinion there between the players and the coach. Dupes, do you think there's anything notable about how hard driving Montgomery has been this year, as opposed to last year with this team, especially with the results being pretty good?
Well, they never had to go to that gas pedal last year, right? Emotional
No.
gas pedal, because all they did was win. So it's kind of been awkward to see him try to show that muscle, and by muscle, I mean the sort of that approach to them. So I don't know if they're hearing it. I don't know if they don't buy it. But I haven't seen by him being stern that they've had that emotional lift. So again, that may be a measure that they just don't have it, right? I don't know whether he's trying to develop it or they don't have it. I don't think they're wired that way. I don't see that there's anybody, there's no, not that he'd be the cure to this, but there's no Sean Thornton here.
No.
Who's going to just step in at the moment and be that emotional spark plug. Go out and try to ragdoll somebody. That ain't happening. They just don't have it. So the other co-element here, what might have sort of given them this lift was, many of us were excited at the start that, okay, this is going to be Poitras and Beecher. Well, you know what? They're not doing it. Beecher, frankly, is among their lead hitters. Think of that for a second, right?
I know.
Guy in your fourth line who's not built that way, he's right there at the top for hitting. So there's no, at least so far, there's been no big lift from the kids that I think was sort of the anticipation here. Not only might Poitras step in and I didn't see him stepping into the top six, but might he be that kid who could challenge that? He has stepped back. Beecher looks to me, I felt this way at MSG last weekend. Beecher's got the speed and build to be Kreider, right?
Or Eichel. Yeah, when I watched him skate, I thought of Eichel. Same thing, just that long, powerful stride. He just, I feel like when I watch him, though, I see Daniel Paille, not necessarily the way he skates, but just the speed, the aggressiveness he plays with, puts him in all kinds of great offensive positions, but he just doesn't have the hands and the ability to finish a lot of the plays that he can put himself into by virtue of his speed and the way that he skates and everything else. I just don't know that he's got the hands or the offensive finishing ability around the net that guys like Kreider and Eichel do, unfortunately, which, turns him into a fourth line center, at least to start in the NHL.
Yeah. And it's not fair to go say guy looks like similar body build. There's a million personalities in the game, but boy, if he could, and maybe we do this podcast in 3 years from now. And he has developed that. They have given him the opportunity to play on PP1. And he does have some hands. Right now, we haven't seen that.
He's never showed that he's had those hands at any level, really.
No,
correct.
So you kind of hoping for something that's never come to the fore.
Right, but again, yeah, absolutely right. But that's the reason. That's the reason they take a shot at him in the first round, right? If you've got that build and you've got those legs, that maybe that gets teased out. I don't know. As we know, a lot of times these kids are defined by their genetic wiring. They're defined, at age 16, 17, 18. Not a lot of guys come into the league as 230 hitters and end up being 350 hitters.
I mean, he's an NHL player. Bottom six. He's a bottom six guy, and there's no shame in that. But you can't wait around hoping he's going to develop into a 20-goal scorer, because I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Yeah, no, exactly what I was saying about Brad Marchand, right?
But he scored.
He's the other one I got right
at all different levels. He scored at all different levels.
He did. When he was in junior, he was a big time scorer, and the expectation was he might be able to do that at the NHL level. Beecher, you don't necessarily draft guys in the fourth round that you project to be fourth line centers in the first round. That's not usually the way it goes. And I felt the same way about when they drafted Trent Frederick in the first round. You don't really draft guys you project as third line centers in the first round, in my mind anyway. You take a shot on players that might have a higher ceiling, but you always felt like watching Beecher in college at Michigan that, given his build, the way that he skated, he was more of a pro player. The pro game was going to be a better fit for him than college was anyway. And I think we're seeing that that's the case. If they get a guy that, can be a bottom six center and be capable every once in a while of flashing and plays physical and wins faceoffs, that's a good serviceable player for them.
Do have Factor Meals to help us out. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit when it does get busy, when it does get crazy, when we do need a quick meal. They fuel you up fast with flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. Takes less than 2 minutes to cook them. They're fresh, never frozen, meals ready in 2 minutes, like I said. They have calorie-conscious options, going upscale with some of the things they're offering now, like surf and surf meal options, roasted garlic filet mignon, and shrimp, and Cajun spiced shrimp and salmon, which is right in my wheelhouse. This is the kind of stuff I'm all about. So it's got everything for everybody. There's 34 plus chef prepared, dietitian approved weekly options for meals. You can get snacks, you can get breakfast items. It's a great deal. So if you want to get Factor Meals, go to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use the code Haggs50 to get 50% off of your first box. It's a great deal. I've tried it. It's fantastic. I recommend it to you. We love these ready to make meal kits, especially when we're on the go with our kids. So one more time, that's factormeals.com/Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. You won't be sorry if you go to Factor Meals. It gets the Haggs thumbs up seal of approval.
We talked a little bit earlier about Poitras and him getting scratched last night, Dupes. This is something you expect to see intermittently throughout the season in a dreaded load management kind of kind of thing here to give him a look upstairs and also give him a chance to hit the refresh button a little bit?
Yeah, frankly, I don't necessarily think he's a guy who has to go look at it from me. I think he sees the game quite well.
Yeah.
But again, just from body build, age, all of it, I think we'll see more of this. He remains eligible, of course, for World Junior. He's still eligible to go back to his regular junior team.
I would love to see them, by the way, and I've said this a few times. I would love to see them let him go play for Team Canada at the World Juniors. Like, I know they probably won't do that because I felt like they missed him, frankly, last night in his puck possession and his offensive ability on the ice against the Sabres when they did sit him. And that's a reflection on, their forwards in the group that they have and, his talent, frankly. But I think, honestly, it might be the best thing for him developmentally and for, what you're going to get out of him come playoff time and late in the season if you allowed him to go with Team Canada for a month and let him play in this tournament and then have him come back and just make do with what you have in the meantime while he's gone. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it actually would benefit both parties here.
Yeah, the trick to that, the added, I agree wholeheartedly. And as I was looking at the schedule for the Canadian team and the Bruins team, it's the tough part is going over to Europe to play the tournament in Sweden, give up the games here, come back. I think as they come back, they go right on that a long roadie to Vegas and Arizona, Colorado, St. Louis, if I got the teams right. So, yes, and emotionally, I think it'd be a hell of a lot easier if the tournament was in Halifax. The fact that it's overseas and all of it, you're looking to give the kid a mental blow. In the end, it may be a negative.
Absolutely. All right. Twitter question of the week. Dupes, I think you're going to like this one. Steve, I think you will too. But Dupes is always after asking the coach after the game, after a bad loss, if there's any troops down in Providence that are going to be able to come up and switch out here, even though that doesn't happen as much anymore. Kip Wingirder asks, time for some changes. Move out Geeky and bring up Mark McLaughlin or Georgi Merkulov. Move out Grizzlick for Lowry or Ashan. And I hate to break it to Kip that Jack Ashan is no longer on the Bruins organization. But somebody else, I guess, he wants from Providence, not Jack Ashan. Also need a big, tough defenseman. Crap the big bed on getting Nikita Zadorov. He would have really helped. Grr. Dupes, is there anybody in Providence that you think could help this team as far as reinforcements go?
Well, I could make a case for all the names he's brought, other than Ashan, of course. All the names he's brought up there.
Yeah.
I suppose the only place I would disagree is on the Geeky thing. I think Geeky can really be a player. I'd at the moment, I'd be not force feeding him, but using him the way they envisioned, which was as last night as a center. Get him in there, get his legs going, see a little bit of success brings more. But sure, you can make a case for Lysell, you can make a case for McLaughlin, all of them. But as you foreshadowed there, it's just a far more difficult exercise now because of the money and the cap and all that maneuvering.
Yeah, and in all due diligence, we did have Mark Diver on earlier this week, who watches the Providence Bruins quite a bit.
Yep.
And some of these guys just aren't meriting call-ups right now either. I guess Merkulov's been struggling quite a bit. Not as productive as last year. I think he's a minus player down there right now. So he's not, some of the shine has come off him this year as he's focusing on trying to be a two-way player. I think Lysell has had a lot of ups and downs. Mark McLaughlin is definitely settling into like a bottom six reinforcement potentially, but not somebody that's going to, really bring anything offensively. And Lowry, frankly, did not play great when he went back down either. Was certainly not, a dominant defenseman by any means. But Steve, is there anybody you see in Providence, that could get a call at some point if they went into an extended spell like this where they needed a wake-up call?
Yeah, the idea of it is more enticing than the reality of it. I think it's. I mean, the Farinacci kid, I guess, is having a decent season. So maybe you could take a look at him. He's a little bit older than some of the prospects, so maybe he's more ready. But yeah, if that's the way they're looking to improve the team, I'm not sure if anything down in Providence is going to get you over the top.
No, I don't think so either. I think those days have come and gone, but I still appreciate that Dupes asked that question after a tough loss sometimes. Whether there's reinforcement.
Are you going to bring the kids up? Are you going to bring the kids up?
What about a sniper?
That already snipers down in Providence at the Dunkin' Donuts Center.
Actually, the best body they have in Providence is the one they had up last night, and that's Bussy, the one they don't need.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Dupes, Steve Conroy, thank you very much for joining us today on the Pucks with Haggs podcast. We always appreciate it. Let's give a quick thanks to our sponsors, Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, dietitian-approved calorie-smart meals, around or less than 550 calories per serving, ready in 2 minutes in the microwave, delicious. Head to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use code Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. And FanDuel Sportsbook, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Just download the app, very easy to use. Go to FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season, right? Or kick off the NFL playoffs coming up soon. Dupes, Steve Conroy, thank you very much. We'll do this again in a couple of weeks.
All right, lads.
Take care, guys. And thank you
for
listening.